Hello, I'm Adam Benson, and today I'm going to take you through my process for recording a very simple score I did for a friend of mine's short film. She needed an overly dramatic, 80s style cop drama theme for a ridiculous comedy she was doing, and I had a good idea I could give her exactly what she needed. So I'm going to go through my process for doing the recording in this video, and in subsequent videos, I'll go through what I did to mix, edit, and master this for the final film. So stick around and join me on this short musical adventure. What I'm doing here is called a pedal tone.
This is going to be the most boring bass line ever.
It might be boring, but it's the kind of thing that keeps the basis of the song flowing. What I started with for the drums was a little too much for what I needed. These kind of accents are going to be used to kind of build those driving 80s themes.
So a lot of times I like to use an upright bass to give me like a grittier undertone. So what I'm about to do after I resin up this bow is to record the same kind of pedal tone bass that I did earlier on the electric bass, but on the electric stand-up bass that you cannot see here.
In this case, I'm mirroring the same pedal tone as I stated before for the electric bass to give it a beefier underside.
I've had a rethink on the drums, so I'm going to do a couple of new tracks to replace my first drum track.
This one didn't end up working out for what I needed. But this one was a little more right on target for the kind of piece that I was recording.
I'm going to add some timpanis. So I think I've got a part for the cello that'll work, and I'm going to try it, and let's see where we get. The cello is ultimately going to require several different pieces to go with it. I need to record several layers of cello to make it feel more like a full orchestra. So some of these will be take after take, which I won't necessarily video all of these because, you know, hard drive space is limited. But what I will do is record multiples of these until I get something that feels thick, and then I will go on to another part for the cello, and then ultimately we'll get into violin, and then a little bit of guitar, and maybe some trumpet for punch toward the end. And then after that, I don't know. I know that I'm going to be fading out of this, so I'm a little less concerned about how it all ends up. I still want to try to get it right. That being said, one of the techniques that I employ when I'm recording an orchestra of things, where I'm layering multiple cellos and multiple violins, is I'll record one, and then I will record a second one and match to it. The match will ultimately be better than the first. So then I will go back and re-record the first matching to the second. And then I'll do the same thing with the third, and I'll bounce between the tracks until I get something that starts to sound really consistent. Especially since I'm not rehearsing this, I'm writing it on the fly. And that's one of the problems with this method of recording, is that there's no plan, there's no rehearsal. It's just off the top of my head, trying to get these things done quickly and also as professionally as possible, understanding the limitations of the equipment that I'm working with, and the time frames that I'm working with, and the fact that I don't have a whole orchestra to rehearse with. I have to kind of write this, record it, and learn it all at the same time. So that's my process. I'm now going to set up to record my second track.
These kind of cello tracks are intended to be like a full chord. So the idea is that in an orchestra you'll have multiple cellos all playing together, but they're not all playing the exact same thing. It's like any other chord where you have a major scale, dun dun dun. Each one of those will be played by a different cellist until you get something that sounds very full. And the more cellos that you have, the fuller the orchestra sounds. By recording more of that here, I'm getting a fuller orchestral sound, even though I'm just one person.
I had an idea for a little bit of piano. It's real background stuff, but I think it'll enhance.
I had a producer once tell me that if you want anything to just sound better, you always throw in a little shaker or tambourine and it will magically change your music from something that sounds good to something that sounds great. And I have found that to be true. So the guitar tracks just needed some variation, and I knew that while I was recording it, those guitar hits were not happening where they were going to in the film, but that's okay because they're easily editable and I can move them around to fit the strikes that needed to happen in the film.
I think I'm going to have to do about 10 to 14 different violin tracks to really get this thing to sound full. It needs some swelling in the back, and then it needs things that accompany the cellos to make that hit a little cleaner. So yeah, I'm going to get that set up and start recording here pretty soon. What I'm doing right now, if you're curious, is I'm putting resin on the hairs. It's just a simple amber resin that helps the strings get sticky to the bow. It makes for a better sound.
Another thing that you get by stacking tracks like this is you get a bit of a phase variation between the different wave files. So even though I might be recording the exact same thing in track 1 and track 2, the subtle variations between those actually make things sound fuller a lot of the times. If you're not careful, it can make it sound very muddy, and that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is keep the tracks very tightly knit together. But even in that, you're going to get micro variations between the two that end up making it sound bigger. And that's what I like to do.
Okay, so day 3, I've got an okay mix on this so far, but I think I need some extra guitars to help break up some of the violin stuff. I'm going to repeat what the violin's playing. I just want some more thickness on that main theme. So here we go.
Even with these extra guitar parts, I'm not playing the same exact thing from track to track. I'm playing a lower register and then a higher register, or a fifth, or probably a fifth. I tend to go to fifths and octaves if I'm playing something like this, even though sometimes I might do a seventh or a ninth, depending on the piece of music. In this case, it was a fifth. And if you're not sure what that means, it's basically when you're going from one whole note to the next, it'll be 5 steps up before you reach the octave. So you've got 8 major steps in an octave, a total of 12 notes. So on this case, major steps, a fifth would just be, if this is my bass note, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up, and that will be my middle note. So a lot of times I'll do that when I'm stacking guitars or violins or cellos, because it helps build out that chord structure. Because ultimately, for instruments that are using generally single strings, like a bass or a cello or a violin or a trumpet for that matter, the orchestra builds chords by having multiple people play different parts of a chord structure. I will admit that trumpet is not my strongest instrument, but that being said, when you keep something consistent and then you record it in stacks, a lot of that gets muddied to a degree that you don't actually hear the fact that I'm not a great trumpet player. Well, that about wraps up the recording process of this show. I hope there was something in there that'll help you or give you some inspiration for your own recordings, and maybe even give you some ideas of the kind of things you can do to make bigger-than-life sounds with little more than a one-man band. If you'd like to see how I took this recording to final, check out my other videos on my YouTube channel, and go to www.adamdbenson.com/learning for this and other how-to videos for all things music, visual effects, and programming related. Also, be sure to like and subscribe here, and check out my Patreon account at www.patreon.com/sleep-deprived-productions. Remember that your subscription there goes to help keeping this channel alive. So I appreciate your support, and thank you very much for watching.